For me, an expert is someone who takes the trouble to go and seek that information or make an attempt to learn and understand. Expert necessarily doesn't mean you have 2 PhDs from Oxford. Especially today when there is so much information available, you could take 30 minutes and read up what's online to see different points of view. And that is a pretty decent threshold. What is not okay is to speak about a topic and have a point of view about which you have zero clues. For example, there is Uyghurs in China. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Uyghurs,
Yeah.
where they are systematically being wiped out because of the Chinese government policy. Now, on the face of it, all of us say, oh, that's horribly wrong. But beyond that, if you want to speak, I think you should read up. You should, if you're going to comment on something, you should take the trouble to read, to learn, to understand, and more importantly, listen. Because the best experts in the world listen and they learn from their own mistakes. Expert doesn't mean 100% right. Expert just means someone who's taken the trouble to learn.
Okay, Joe.
So it's interesting. I answered differently, but I don't actually disagree with what you're saying. So I was thinking, but maybe it's about the terminology around experts.
Yeah.
Because my view is we don't have to be an expert to speak about something. If we're feeling that something coming up and it's important and relevant, I think it is our duty to actually become more knowledgeable. You don't have to be an expert, but you do, I think, owe the topic some, I suppose, respect of like trying to become knowledgeable. So that's not to me expertise, that is still, so I think for me I would be like, do your work, do you think self-reflection, do your research, be mindful about the impact of what you speak about, but none of those things are experts, those are considered respectful citizens. So I coined them, my terminology was different around expert.
I think so as well. Like I agree with a lot of things that you said. I see an expert as someone, maybe an exaggerated view of someone that's been studying it for years, they're into it, they've probably gone to the country and spoken to people, like someone that's really engrossed in it. And I feel like instead of someone having to be an expert to speak about something, I think that they should be informed. Like I think to speak about something when you don't have any information is a bit wild, but be informed somewhat, whatever that means to you. I think that is important versus being an expert personally, because I think also through having conversations like with informed people, that's a way for you to learn more, that's a way for you to challenge anything that you believe beforehand, and that's a way for you to gain more information anyway. So I think it's important to speak out and have that conversation and not stay silent.
Chris?
I fall on the side predominantly with what Alicia and Joe were saying. Like you don't have to be an expert, but you definitely have to be informed and compassionate enough to care. I think we live in a time where, the opinion has now evolved into the hot take, and people are encouraged to just speak even if they're not informed. Again, I'm going to go to music. This is what I understand. You have people talking about albums and music, about stuff that they weren't even alive to experience, and I literally see history rewritten in my face. A couple of weeks ago, so my wife is Middle Eastern, and I haven't commented on the Israel-Palestine situation because I woke up one day and I'm like, Chris, you don't know anything about this. I know what I felt in the sense of, this feels wrong, people are dying, this ain't right. So I had to sit down with my wife and I said, can you explain to me in layman's terms what's going on here? And she took about 10, 15 minutes and she explained it to me in a way that I could understand. Then afterwards I went and I researched it. I find the problem what you have with a lot of discussions, and why I sometimes shy away from discussions like this, is because I find some people are trying to prove that they know more than you, or they're trying to give you their opinion before explaining the situation. So you don't, to answer your question, you don't need to be an expert. An expert is subjective. Like Joe said, an expert, or Alicia rather, some experts, they've done the 10,000 hours and gone to the country and they can speak the language and they've read the hieroglyphics carved in stone. That's great, and I support that, but you just have to be informed enough to care, and the onus is on you as a person to find out the information, and also be mindful of where you get the information from, because this is the age of misinformation.
Yeah.
I think conversations with people, I think that's the best way to learn and engage, and just to be honest and say, look, I don't know. I care, but I don't know.
And not all information, the academic and information is not necessarily more important than some of the emotional information. And I think, you know, expert implies it's an academic exercise.
Yeah.
And it's not.
1 second before you jump in, Alicia, I want Larry to come in.
Yeah, I believe every single word that Chris said. I wasn't nodding all the way through because I was listening, but I was nodding in my brain all the way through. That you don't have to be expert, or what's even worse is if you think you are, because you've been on Google and you've read a few things and you
got
think
your doctorate
you're an
from
expert.
Google.
Yeah.
And you assume you're an expert and then you express. What you need to do is be informed enough to have a really good conversation, but listen. Listening to what other people are telling you is what will eventually get you to be more expert. It won't be from reading social media or even the news, because those are all written from slanted, biased viewpoints. You get a very different feeling from somebody when you have a proper human conversation, where you are actually listening to the person's answers rather than just listening for the things which agree with what you believe and then jumping in and supporting that bit, but forgetting to listen to the bit that was
And it's not a
actually a bit
competition.
of a challenge to what you were saying.